Hello, my name's John Davis and I'm the CEO of the Australian Constructors Association. Governments of all levels are currently relying on the construction industry to lead the economy forward, on the basis that every dollar spent on the construction of new infrastructure has a $3 kick-on to the wider economy. But the industry being relied upon is not in great shape. Construction companies account for almost 25% of all business insolvencies in Australia. Productivity growth in the construction industry over the last 30 years lags other major industries by 25%. Only 12% of our workforce are women, and this number declines to 2 to 3% for blue-collar workers. And most shockingly of all, our workers are 6 times more likely to die from suicide than a workplace incident. If nothing is done to address these issues, we'll struggle to attract and retain enough people to undertake the record pipeline of projects ahead of us. In October, Infrastructure Australia released a report on this very issue. The report identified that major public infrastructure activity will double over the next 3 years, peaking at $52 billion in 2023. And employment in the infrastructure sector will need to grow from 183,000 people today to more than 288,000 in 2023. These people will need to be drawn from right across industry, especially as in recent times, contractors have sought to mitigate increasing exposure to risk by subcontracting works and associated risks to specialist and general works contractors. We'll not be able to solve this capacity problem as we have in the past by flying people in from overseas, as every other major jurisdiction around the world is also spending big on infrastructure, and so there'll be huge international competition for resources. We need to think differently. Importantly, if we want to solve the critical issues facing the construction industry and deliver the record pipeline of projects, we need to first understand how industry works. The prevailing view of the construction industry is one of an industry that can be neatly divided into sectors such as commercial buildings, civil infrastructure, and residential. Contractors and designers operating in these sectors are defined as being Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3, and supply chains by definition are viewed as simple, linear relationships. This view of the industry is outdated and unhelpful. As an example, it has been suggested by some that one way to address the looming capacity problem is to break up large projects into smaller packages of work that can be undertaken by Tier 2 and Tier 3 contractors. This assumes that there's some magical pool of resources waiting to be tapped. As anyone who's tried to get some home renovation or repair works done recently will tell you, there are currently very few tradies sat at home waiting for the phone to ring. Whilst no definition has ever been agreed, the tier system has been used to describe different sizes of contractors and designers based largely on the revenue they generate. It doesn't take into account important things like whether the revenue generates profit, how much profit is invested in training and innovation, the diversity within the business, and the resources and technical expertise that it can call upon. It's also unhelpful to look at the relationship between a contractor and its subcontractors and suppliers as a linear supply chain, where work is broken down into progressively smaller components delivered by companies that only operate in one sector, such as commercial building, housing, or civil infrastructure, or for one type of client, such as government or private. Most companies that operate in the construction industry mitigate cyclical workload risk by operating in multiple sectors and for more than one type of client. If we go back to my tradie example, it doesn't matter if you're trying to fix the roof of your house, the roof of an office, or install a roof on a new warehouse building. You'll currently struggle to find someone to do this for you. We also need to consider the influence of globalization on our industry. Most people will be familiar with the concept of globalization, the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations, brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services and technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. The construction industry has not been immune from globalization. We import timber from North America, stone from Europe, steel from China, and specialist skills from just about everywhere. Less well understood is the fact that we also import balance sheet capacity. What do I mean by this? Clients want the assurance that if construction risks are realised, the contractor will have the financial resources to be able to deal with them, or in the worst case scenario, to absorb any losses associated with them and still be able to pay subcontractors and suppliers and to complete the project. As projects get bigger, so do the risks associated with constructing them, and therefore the available capacity of a company's balance sheet required to deal with them. While some of this risk can be insured, the recent high incidence of insurance claims has increased premiums to levels uneconomic for most. The financial capacity of the Australian market to undertake larger mega projects has not kept pace with the demand, and has therefore resulted in the need to import capacity. So in summary, the construction industry is heavily interconnected. It's not easily capable of being broken down and categorized. Projects are built by many interrelated teams of people, specialist trades and suppliers that operate across sectors and can be sourced from any part of the globe. In short, the construction industry can be defined as a complex system. It is not capable of being broken down like a watch, where you can see all the parts and see what causes what. So how do you fix problems with complex systems and improve how efficiently they operate? Well, thankfully, there's an emerging area of science that is focused on just this issue. It is called complex system theory. In accordance with complex system theory, a complex system can be defined as a system of many parts without centralized control. All of these parts operate on different scales, but in some way impact on each other either directly or indirectly. This high interdependence is the opposite of the linear relationships we currently think of in a supply chain. In fact, in complex theory, they are referred to as non-linear relationships. Complex system theory explains that strong feedback loops in these non-linear systems can cause complex systems to adapt very quickly to small changes in the operating environment. We only have to look at how quickly the construction industry responded to the COVID pandemic to see that this is true. Complex systems also have a high degree of connectivity between the various parts. In fact, it's the connections that define the system, not the properties of the various parts. It's therefore not surprising that we struggle to achieve positive outcomes using traditional contracts in an environment where every action has a knock-on effect. Because a traditional contract presumes we can know everything in advance, plan for it, and allocate all the risks effectively. Risk isn't a linear concept. It is systemic. If we're delivering projects inside a complex system, we can't manage that risk by allocating it to one party. Instead, we need to focus on how the system works and adopt strategies that drive better outcomes across the system. Collaborative contract models provide a better structure in which to respond to a complex environment because they bring together more parts of the system. They enable better contextual joint decision-making, and they align the interests of all parties to look for and solve problems. Enterprise models take this a step further. An enterprise model brings together owners, partners, advisors, and suppliers working in more integrated and collaborative arrangements, underpinned by long-term relationships to deliver programs of work over a defined period of time. Participating organisations are incentivised to deliver better outcomes. The Melbourne Level Crossing Removal Programme is effectively using a simple enterprise model to undertake the various individual removal projects. Contractors and designers have been engaged using collaborative forms of contract and are incentivised to meet targets and deliver progressively better outcomes. Project 13 takes this a step further. Developed by the Institute of Civil Engineers in the UK, the Project 13 procurement model seeks to define the key elements necessary for a successful enterprise model, including a focus on long-term system performance and future operation. developing an ecosystem of partners and suppliers with more integrated relationships, providing the opportunity for early engagement. Reward based on value added to the overall outcome, not on time or volume. And risk allocation aligned with capability rather than transferred through tiers of the supply chain. This final component is particularly interesting and involves an innovative risk management model where shares in the risk pool are treated like shares in a company and allocated on the basis of a party's ability to influence outcomes, with stakeholders positively incentivized to deliver improved outcomes. Here in Australia, Project 13 has been adopted by Sydney Water, and the model is being looked at with interest by other delivery agencies. Given the high degree of complexity in complex systems, it stands to reason that performance of the system is dependent on the strength of these connections and how things like work, goods, information, and money flow through the system. By separating design from construction and breaking projects down into hundreds of subcontracts, we impede the flow of knowledge from suppliers to the front end of the project, where value is created, adding costs and uncertainty at every stage of the way. This is why a focus on flow is one of the key principles of lean construction. Lean construction is a relationship-focused production management system that aims to eliminate waste from the entire construction process and deliver greater value to the clients. Lean construction also recognizes the complexity of the construction industry and therefore the need to optimize the system as a whole. As a focus on improving the performance of one part of the system could have unintended negative consequences for the other parts. In the same way as happens in the natural world, complex systems undergo a process of evolution, which is unsurprising given that the natural world is in itself a complex system. In this environment, only the fittest will survive, which may explain the adversarial nature of the construction industry and the high rate of construction company insolvencies. So is there anything that can be done to change this? We currently operate in an environment where contracts are generally awarded to the contractor with the lowest price, willing to accept the most risk. It is a short-sighted race to the bottom that is largely responsible for many of the issues that our industry currently faces, and historically has shown this focus on lowest upfront cost and risk transfer rarely delivers value to the asset owner. This is because it fails to take into account lifecycle cost, local content, or environmental impact. It doesn't incentivize increased use of social and indigenous enterprise, innovation, or improved productivity. The Construction Industry Leadership Forum, a collaboration between the ACA and the New South Wales and Victorian public sectors, is set out to improve the effectiveness and value achieved through procurement and delivery of government infrastructure programs. The forum is currently working on developing a framework that will help infrastructure clients better define and achieve value for money through the procurement process. Given the volume of construction work procured by governments, their delivery agencies are uniquely placed to act as model clients and in the process to change the focus of the whole construction network. From one fixated on staying alive by offsetting risk and litigating to recover losses, to one focused on delivering improved value throughout the network. Another way in which government delivery agencies could make the network more sustainable is through improved packaging of projects. An increasing proportion of economic infrastructure investment is being concentrated in high-value mega projects. This is particularly true for transport investment. These projects are not only very costly, but more complex and involve substantial underground works and multiple interfaces in congested brownfield locations. All this brings substantial additional risks that are then spread throughout the construction network. Contrary to the views of some in industry, if projects were possible to be broken down into smaller components, it would not directly address capacity constraints. In fact, in the short term, it would lead to increased resource requirements in government delivery agencies. What it would do, though, is reduce risk for the construction network and allow for an increased focus on innovation and efficiency which in turn would reduce demand for resources over time. Finally, another area where the government could drive improvement is in terms of addressing the poor culture that exists within the construction network. According to BIS Oxford Economics, in its recent report, The Cost of Doing Nothing, the construction industry's poor culture is estimated to be costing the economy over $8 billion every year. If not addressed, it could further impact on our ability to attract and retain the workers required to construct the pipeline of work ahead of us. In their report, The Great Resignation, PwC identified that the COVID pandemic has caused the population to reflect and reconsider what is important in life, and that 38% of the workforce is looking to leave their current employer in the next 12 months. They identified that after remuneration, the most important consideration for workers is improved well-being, an area in which the construction network does not have a very good track record. This is why, expanding on the important work of the Construction Industry Leadership Forum, the Australian Contractors Association has partnered with the governments of New South Wales and Victoria in the Construction Industry Culture Task Force. Guided by academic research, the Construction Industry Culture Task Force has developed a groundbreaking industry culture standard to improve industry culture by detailing measures that, if adopted, will improve time for life, well-being, diversity and inclusion. The measures include diversity targets, adoption of flexible work hours, and implementation of well-being programs. Governments will be called upon to incorporate compliance with the culture standard into their standard procurement requirements and adopt the measures themselves. Whilst there's much that government can and must do to improve the sustainability and performance of the construction network, there's much that other parts of the network can do for themselves. And for its part, ACA is committed to working with government and industry to shift the dial and to set the industry on a more sustainable path. We identified that there are three key pillars for a sustainable construction industry, which I've already largely discussed. These are improved industry culture, equitable and aligned commercial frameworks, and sufficient capability, capacity, and skills. In 2020, we published 10 commitments to change that are aligned to these three key pillars. The commitments are increased collaboration with clients and industry partners, maximizing the social and economic benefits of construction, building a social license to operate, improving industry diversity, improving the health and well-being of our workers, building capability and capacity, reduce impact on the environment, encourage innovation and improve productivity, and strive for improved industrial relations. Recognizing the importance of the construction network, the final commitment was to improve outcomes for all project stakeholders. In releasing these commitments, the key message to all industry stakeholders is that we all have a role to play and we all need to work together. We've proven we can do this, and the work underway by the Construction Industry Leadership Forum and the Construction Industry Culture Task Force are evidence of this. But more needs to be done. So, to summarize, the construction industry has been presented with an enormous opportunity. We've been called upon to lead the nation's economic recovery. But we are faced with challenges that could seriously impact on our ability to do this. In order to address these challenges, we need to shift our thinking of how the construction industry works, from an industry made up of defined sectors, tiers, and linear supply chain, to a highly connected, complex network of suppliers, trades, designers, contractors, and clients. Capability and capacity constraints represent a real risk to the delivery of the record pipeline. But seeking to reallocate work from one undefined tier to another is not the answer. We need to take a more collaborative approach to delivering projects that focuses on improving productivity and delivering best value, not lowest cost. We need to adopt a culture standard to attract back into the industry the half the working population that currently considers it a less than desirable place to work: women. We need to improve the well-being of our workforce so that our existing workforce see the industry as an attractive place to continue their career. We need to adopt enterprise delivery models like Project 13 that incentivize the construction network to innovate and continuously improve. But these actions require joint government and industry response and leadership from federal government. We all have a part to play in achieving change, and I call on all of you to get informed and be involved. You can join the conversation by connecting with the ACA through LinkedIn and by visiting our website www.constructors.com.au. We have no time to waste. The time for action is now.